So many great things have happened in the last few years. And for me personally, some terrible things have happened, and yet some wonderful things too. And I wanted to share that with all of you guys who keep asking about when I'm going to start doing videos again. Well, here I am. I'm giving this a good shot. And one of the great things that's happened is 4K video has come of age, and now we have 4K. Back my old stuff was 1080p. It wasn't so great. It was a little fuzzy. You could still see what was going on, but nothing compares to 4K. It's a nice format, and I'll add these videos to the YouTube channel, and I'll try to keep them up because I know there's a lot of questions, and I don't want the site to become just a how-to reference. There's a lot of sites out there that talk about how-to, and that's okay. That's great. But what I wanted to show you is that I'm still alive. I'm doing a lot of very nice things. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to make knives for a living. I am so blessed. I am so lucky. I'm so lucky to have the wife I have in my life. I'm so lucky to have my family. And to be in this place, this beautiful day. You can see over my shoulder, if you look out the window, you'll see a nice little lake that's, some people call it a pond. The difference between a pond and a lake is, if you can see the bottom, it's a pond. So I guess it's a little lake. Anyway, it's stocked by the New Mexico Game and Fish Department. It's right across the street from the shop, and right now we have about 1,000 geese coming and going this time of the year because it's February, and they're about ready to head back up north. It's a very exciting time and happy to see them all leave. But these are some of the transient passers through in this neighborhood, and it's a nice neighborhood to be in. I live in eastern New Mexico, in case you weren't aware of that. Eastern New Mexico doesn't get a lot of attention. It is one of the top agricultural areas of our state. In fact, about 12 miles from where I'm talking to you right now is the largest cheese plant in the world. A lot of people don't know that. They think, oh, cheese, Wisconsin. No. Clovis, New Mexico. If you eat white cheese on a pizza, chances are it's come from the cheese plant, Southwest Cheese, just a few miles from here. And this is also, if you're familiar with the Clovis area, Clovis is home to the Clovis culture. What is Clovis culture? Well, it's not something modern and cool and hip and slick. That would be great. Unfortunately, Clovis culture is incredibly old, like 13,000 years old. Clovis culture is a Paleo-Indian culture that was discovered down here at Blackwater Draws, about another 15 miles from where I'm sitting, and it is one of the oldest cultures in the Americas. And there's a lot of debate as to how old this culture is and all, and we'll talk about that in the future. I wanted to share a lot of neat things with you. I can't do it in one video, but I'm going to continue to talk because that's what I do best, because I have a big mouth. So that's to your advantage, because I can talk your ear off. Anyway, I know a lot of guys have wondered, and women, but mostly people who appreciate knives. I'm not dissing the women. What I do know is that knife making and knife appreciation and knife collecting is mainly a man's domain. But I'm not going to leave the women out. My wife wouldn't let me do that, and neither would I want to. But when I say you guys, it's talking to all of the people that have supported me through the years. I know that without the patronage of all the great knife collectors and users and buyers and patrons and people I've had over the years, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. And without continual influx of new clients and new makers, the knife making as a trade craft wouldn't continue. And it will always continue as long as we're legally allowed to, and we might talk about some of that at a future time. I think it's a very important subject in the world of freedom and politics that's going on today, to make sure that we maintain our freedoms here in the United States of America. And I am honored to be a citizen of this country because it allows me to do what I do love, and that's making knives. Now, at the time of this recording, let's see, I made my first knife in 1979 or so, and I've been making knives. I started the business full-time in 1988. So I have been making knives as a full-time professional knife maker now for Oh my gosh, 38 years or so, yeah. So, and I've made knives for 47 years, so I've made a lot of knives. And you can see most of the knives that I've made, a great deal of them, on my website, which is jfisher.com. Now, when you go to the website, first thing you're going to say is like what a lot of people say, oh my gosh, this is an old website. Yeah, it was built in 1996 and then revamped initially, and then revamped continually from 2015 to like 2015 to about 2019. And then things started to change in web development and stuff. And what's happened is, and the reason the website looks antiquated is because it's written in strict HTML code. So nobody does that anymore. Everybody's doing WordPress. WordPress is the dominant leading way that a web site is built today. I mean, I looked at other ones like Drupal and Joomla and some of the other platforms, and it turns out that the preferred website build in the world today is WordPress. And why? Because, I mean, WordPress, you could call it the Honda Civic of sites, because everybody uses it. AI can use it. It's something that's accepted by Google and the search engine as being validated, fairly free of a lot of hacks and trouble. And in doing so, what it means is that at some point in time, I need to upgrade the site. Well, we talked about that a lot and decided that probably the best thing to do is to build some satellite sites that are more mobile friendly. Now, the problem that arises with an HTML strict site, no matter how you build it, no matter what kind of cascading style sheets or styles you add, or dynamic web templates, or all the old stuff that was in these old sites, and is still in my jfisher.com, that it's very hard to display on the mobile phone. And so what's happened is, because mobile phones have become dominant in the last 10 years in our society, everything is coming in through the mobile phone, and browser support and Google, they all push mobile phone use. Mobile leads. That's what you learn, is mobile leads. So what does that mean for me? Well, I can't go back in and take a 700-page website and completely rebuild it into a WordPress site. That would take me years to do. So instead, what we decided to do, with the help of my loving and extremely smart wife, is that we're building some satellite sites that you'll see pop up. These are jfisher sites. One of them currently that she's building in WordPress so that it's mobile friendly is fantasticknives.com. Just like it sounds, spelled just like it sounds, fantastickknives.com. And you can go there and see that it'll be a lot more mobile friendly if you like to do the mobile stuff. Now, understand that most of my clients through the years have been people who viewed the knives and chosen the knives and appreciated the knives that I built on desktops. Because desktop computers have large monitors, and large monitors can display a beautiful color rendition of the knife and get close to what it really looks like in real life. And by the way, that's why I'm really excited about the 4K, because I'll be able to take knives with the camera setup and everything that I have now. I'll be able to take knives and we'll walk them outside into the sunshine, and you'll see what they really look like. And let me tell you, if you think the pictures are nice on the knives on the website, wait till you see them in the sunlight and then turning them in the light and all. And now with 4K, we'll be able to show you that. I'll be able to show you exactly how beautiful these knives are. And still, if you buy a knife from me and you receive the knife, you're going to find out, oh my gosh, this thing is so much more beautiful than I even imagined. And this is a common theme with the knives I make. And why is that? Because no camera, no reproduction mechanism that we have can capture the incredible beauty of things like gemstone, polished steel, hand-carved leathers, cast bronze, carved woods, all of the wonderful things that go into a fine handmade custom knife. So, let me take a breath there. Anyway, with that out of the way, I'm really looking forward to doing a lot of videos. And another reason is that as a singular knife maker, you don't communicate with a lot of people. I mean, I do communicate with a lot of people. I'll say I went to a show once in Colorado where I saw 80,000 people in one day. 80,000 people. It was within 3 days. Walked past my table, picked up the knives. There were those who were trying to pocket them. It was quite a harrowing experience. But anyway, you can see a lot of people when you do shows. But I haven't done a knife show since I think 2005. Now my history is a little unusual. I've been blessed that I've done enough shows in my youth when I first started my business. I've done enough shows to where I can travel, I traveled around. I traveled all over the world. I did at least 13 shows a year, and I did this for 20 years. And I was a member of the Knifemakers Guild for 19 years. I traveled to Europe. I've done shows in Paris and Stuttgart. I've done them all over the United States, but mainly in the West, mainly Colorado, California, New Mexico, Arizona, that area. And all of these shows were the way that we sold knives back, or the way that I sold knives at least back in from about probably 85. I went to my first show all the way up to 2005. So, excuse me. So, I did the show circuit. I traveled. I was always getting ready for a show or going to a show. And when I say shows, there are some of you who may not be familiar with the way things were back then, and somewhat still are today, but probably not as much as it was back in the heyday of shows. There were different kinds that I did. You could do local shows like the Lions Club or some collectors club or whatever. People would enter knives in state fairs and stuff like that, but I never did that. But then the shows that were more accessible were art and craft shows. So art and craft shows, say, for example, there was one up in Pagosa Springs. This is decades ago, decades ago. And it was beautiful. It was in the springtime. You'd go up there, you'd set up your big Easy Up tent, which is, you've probably seen the Easy Up canopies with the 4 legs on it. And a table, and you'd lay out your knives, and then people were in the area vacationing in springtime. There was no snow by then, so skiing was over. And you'd set up your table, and there would be the so-and-so arts and crafts show. And you'd be sitting, you'd be nestled between a potter who made pottery, and maybe a fine artist, and maybe a sculptor, and then some other types of craftspeople, glass craftsmanship, and there would be the custom knife table. And shows were very good to me. And it's because I worked hard on every one. But anyway, that gives you an example of an arts and crafts show that's outdoors. I have some real interesting stories I can share. Hopefully I'll be able to share in the future on some of these videos with you. Some of the wonderful, horrifying, and sometimes very bizarre things that happened to me while I was on the road. Very strange things. I've seen some strange lights in the Nevada sky that will probably curl your hair. Anyway, so these strange things have happened. But anyway, that's traveling to arts and crafts shows. And then we also had custom knife shows. Now, custom knife shows are misnamed, every single one of them. That's a misnomer, because they're not about custom knives. They're usually about handmade knives. Custom means made to order. Well, you don't go to one of these shows. I mean, it would be rare if you went to a show that was a quote custom knife show. Let's just call it a knife show. And then you set up your table along with 150 other knife makers, and then people are ordering custom knives. Oh, I want this knife made this way. Although that does happen, it's very rare. It's very rare. Mostly you bring the knives that you wish to sell at the show, and then a lot of people come by. These are often in hotel ballrooms. They're sometimes in civic centers. They're sometimes in county centers or big display arenas or things like that. And those are great shows too. I've got some stories to tell about some of those. Some of them are fantastic. Some of them were rarely. Once in a while, I would get skunked. It would be really rare, and skunk means I didn't sell a single knife. But that was pretty rare. I could always go to a show and at least hope to sell enough to make my show fee, table fee, travel money, hotels, and hopefully come home with a little bit of pocket change. And we can talk about that. And that was the show circuit. I also did fine juried art shows. Now, juried art shows are a little tougher. Back then, you would take 35mm slides, and I did all my own photography and all my own processing and everything. And you would take 35mm slides and mount them, and then select them and package them up and mail them to an address where the show was. And then a jury group of artists, professionals. A lot of times these people were college instructors, they were fine artists themselves, or they were business owners or community leaders. They'd sit down on this show panel, and they would put all those slides project them up on the screen, and look through all of your work and say, this is the guy we want, or this is the guy we don't want coming to our show. And I frequently, if not always, made it into this show. And because I tried to take really, really good photos and demonstrate my knives real well, and my knives are unique, so I was blessed to be able to show those to the jury panel. And then the jury panel will tell you, you've been accepted. Oh, excuse me, that is the Dragon. That is my air compressor condensate drain, and it has its own mind. It's on a timer, and it'll always be interrupting the videos. That's another thing. Let me take a little side trip here. I'm doing, this is the first one. There's a lot that I still have to work out with this whole format thing that I'm looking forward to. But I decided to start doing these in the shop, and I'll move around the shop so you'll see different areas of the shop. I know for a lot of you wanted to see kind of the environment that I work in and create these knives in, and then you're going to be real surprised, because knife making isn't the only thing I do. I also do a lot of extremely high fidelity analog audio. I'm talking vacuum tube. I'm talking sound systems and recording studio work. And that's another facet of me that I have put it up on the site, and I haven't crowed about it or talked about it much, but that goes back to my childhood. Let me briefly touch on that, because that's kind of exciting. When I was a kid, my dad had an FCC first class license. And that was rare. That was actually rare. Back in the 60s, you had to have a first class FCC license to work on transmitters, receivers, transponders, for radio stations and television stations. And because of the emergency systems in the country, you had to have someone who had the FCC first class license on hand in case there were an emergency and your transmitter failed, and then you would have to have somebody to be on call to immediately go out to the site and get the transmitter running, repair whatever needed to be repaired, and so that people had access to emergency alerts and signals and stuff like that. So I grew up at a time of televisions, when televisions were CRTs, cathode ray tubes, and most people don't even know what that is, and that's okay. If you see an old television with the round glass bubble thing, that's a CRT. And back then, people used to repair televisions, and then Dad also did audio and stuff. Well, when we first came to Clovis, New Mexico, and that's where I'm broadcasting from today, when we first came here, Dad came because he retired out of the Air Force. He was at Cannon Air Force Base, which still exists out here. We're 6 miles away now from one of the top special operations bases in the world. Is Cannon Air Force Base. And a lot of people came to this community because we came through the military. And Dad was certainly military. Well, he did his 10 years, and he got out in '64. And in 1964, he took out his own ticket, started his own business, had his FCC first class license. He's a ham operator. I think it was extra class. I don't even remember. There were all these different classes. And now the structure is completely different. So is the FCC stuff, by the way. So anyway, he then worked in the area with all of the radio stations and the television stations in Amarillo, Texas, and I don't recall him ever working with anything in Lubbock. Maybe one or two stations there, but most of the work was through Amarillo, Clovis area, and then some of the little smaller communities around here. And in doing so, it didn't take him long before he caught the eye of Norman Petty. And Norman Petty was the man the genius who recorded early Buddy Holly, Waylon Jennings, the Fireballs, Roy Orbison. There was a lot of major rockabilly artists got their start at Norman's studio. Now, as we're sitting right now, I am almost exactly 7 blocks from the original studio, and the original studio still stands. It stands kind of as a memorial. Norman died back, I believe, in '84, and Dad was his engineer. Dad was his electrical engineer in the '60s and into the early '70s. And so I grew up. That was the time I grew up, and I grew up with being in a recording studio, helping my dad build recording studios. Norman built a Music City studio downtown on Main Street. He had several studios, and my dad did all that electronics work. So that's where I learned electronics. And so I could say, although I made knife making, I've made knives since I was younger than 19. The first one I sold was at 19. But in all that time that I've done that, I've done electronics work a lot longer than that, because I was a kid helping my dad. And I mean, I would be soldering boards and helping him pull wires and terminate and being a gopher for him as a kid. But I am so grateful and blessed that I had that experience. It was a huge honor. Norman was a wonderful human being. What a fine man he was. And I remember him kindly, and we'll talk about that more. But anyway, I'm going to briefly touch on this, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but for many years, my father passed in 1999, and for many years I did help them. The Chamber of Commerce and Clovis Economic Development built a museum back in between 2004 and 2006 downtown, and it's still there. It's closed right now for renovation, but they purchased all of some of the finest electronic equipment, analog equipment, from my mother and in my father's estate. They purchased this equipment, and then I helped them haul that all down there, set it up, and we worked with that for a while. Now, let's see. I did a lot of knife work. Of course, knives have been my thing for a long time. But in 2021, my previous wife passed away from cancer, and let me tell you, that's the most. Excuse me. That's the most horrible thing that can ever happen to any person in their life. People say, "Oh, I went to war, or this happened or that happened." When your loved one, when the person you love more than anyone else in the world passes away. So, I will always be grieving for that. And when that happened, I was spending a lot of time in the shop, as always. Knife making is a very singular career. It's something where you do a lot of solitary work. And so I was spending a lot of time alone, and I realized that wasn't very healthy for me. And although I had some family connections, most of the family connections that I had were very far away. So I spent way too much time alone. So I decided to go back down to the Chamber of Commerce and connect with the gentleman at that time who was the head of the Clovis Economic Development Corporation. And we talked a little bit, and I'll go into the story more about how all this came about. But what happened is we decided together to try to get the studio up and running. Now, this was all analog equipment, some of the finest analog equipment ever made for recording, including, if any of you know analog equipment, let's talk about the Fairchild compressors that are down there. Things like that. A lot of Ampex, a lot of Alltech equipment, very fine stuff. But it was 70 years old. It all sat there for a long time. So we decided we were going to get it up and running. Well, then I worked with him for a while, and then he passed from COVID. So anyway, during that same year, then the head of the Chamber of Commerce, a wonderful person named Ernie Koss, asked me to write a grant for the recording studio. So I wrote a grant application for the Chamber of Commerce to build a recording studio, to secure the funds to build a recording studio where we just had a display before. It was just a display. All that equipment was just on display. It wasn't actually functional. And I'll be danged if the New Mexico State Legislature approved it. Thank you, guys. And so they got a little seed money to be able to build this recording studio. So I have been doing all of the analog work for them and getting back in touch with my electronics roots. Now when I show you around the studio, I'm going to show you a lot of equipment that is, because it's machine tool equipment, because it needs operation controls and all that. That equipment is run because of electric controllers, electronics sometimes, and we'll touch on some of that. And I'm not saying that this video is all going to be about all electronics. I'm going to do some more of that on another video, probably on another channel, and definitely on another website. And we've got the basis for that website going that my wife right now is working on, and it's called Fisher Audio Science. And it reflects the work of my father, and then how I've been honored to carry forward some of that work, and with principles and ideas and concepts that I learned when I was a kid, and help this studio and other studios too. I'm talking to other studios. I've met some wonderful people in the recording studio field that are interested in true analog sound, and I'll get into that more. But you're not here because of analog electronics. You're here because of knives. And on a personal note, I'll also say I was very honored to, about a year after I lost my wife, I was very honored to meet and marry Amy Pospischal, who is my wife. And of course, she's my wife. We got married. What the hell? Anyway, so sorry. Amy is a blessing. We'll talk more about our how we got together and how we became a couple, and her wonderful human being. I really don't deserve her. She's just an honor to have around, and she is a wonderful human being. And anyway, okay, I'm not going to get lost in all that, the romance of that. As you get older, you have a very, very deep sense of belonging with the people that are close to you. And by the way, those are the only people that matter. I've heard it said by a couple of different people that, well, a lot of people can say a lot of bad things about you, but none of them matter except the people who are closest to you. And the people who are closest to you will tell you when you're screwing up. They'll tell you when you're overworking or underworking, or whether you're doing something right or wrong, oftentimes when you can't see it yourself. And we all need that. We all need that connection. And I want to share that with you, mostly the people who care enough to be here and want to know what it's like being a custom knife maker, a fine custom knife maker who tries to make the finest knives he possibly can in today's world. All by hand, by the way. All by hand, all right here in the United States of America. Nothing's farmed out. I don't farm out anything. Let's see. I'll touch on that for just a second. When I was young, I have a relative who had his own business. And I asked him, I said, when I started making knives, I asked him, I said, can you give me some advice on this whole idea? By the way, the barking dog you hear is mine. It's our dog. She's out barking because she sees another dog. So, and I'm not cutting audio. I'm not gonna put myself in a little room with a bunch of sound panels and control. At least not now. Maybe I will one day. Maybe down at the studio downtown or something. But for right now, this is very casual. This is my studio, my shop, if you will. This is a big building that sits on a park where a lot of busy people. In fact, if you look out this window, you'll see cars going by. You'll probably also see fishermen trotting off down there to go wet their poles and pluck a few fish out. But anyway, let's see, where was I? My uncle. Yes, that was my uncle, the relative. I asked him for advice about starting a business, and he said, if you can possibly do it, he said, don't hire anyone. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to grow a business if you don't hire anyone? And he said, well, if you can find something you love to do and you don't have to have an employee, that's good. He said, because when you have an employee, you hire that employee, and then you hire all of his family and all of the family problems and all of the issues that you'll have to be involved with. And I'm like, oh, I see. And the other thing he said, which was actually probably more important and more worthwhile in the business I'm in, is to make sure, if you possibly can, to never farm anything out. When you farm something out, he said, you won't be happy with the results of it, and they'll always be lacking in some way. If you can possibly do it all yourself, then do it all yourself. And that's what I've tried to do. And boy, what does it cost me? It's cost me an incredible amount of time. For anyone else who runs their own business, who's an artist, craftsperson, hard-working person, it's extreme. They'll all tell you, these are the extremely hardest working people you will ever meet. We don't get things like days off and vacation, paid vacation. And you can have that. If that's what you want, go for it. If that's what's in your heart, go for it. And by the way, I'm going to be giving a lot of free advice here, and you can consider that what it's worth, free, take it or leave it. It doesn't matter to me, but the knowledge that I've learned as a man my age knows does matter to me, because I've learned it through earning, earned and earn, and stuff like that I think is important. It would have been important to me when I was a younger man. I do remember being a younger man. And we'll talk about that a little bit too. But I'm very happy to be alive. I'm happy to be here. I hope that you will subscribe to the channel. We'll continue these. I want to know your questions. I don't think that it's going to be, I hope it's not going to be, well, how do you tap an 832 machine screw made out of 304 stainless steel? I know, you can find that kind of stuff anywhere. But there are some special things particularly about extremely fine custom knives, that I'll love to share with you. And if you are interested in knives in any way, I encourage you to visit the website, jfisher.com. And you can also look at incredibleknives.com and Fisher Audio Science, and oh gosh, there's several of them. I've got a couple more coming up. I'm doing knivesanatomy.com. I also do consulting. A lot of people don't know about knife consulting. It's a very fascinating field, and it's been very good to me, and I love to do it. There are some limitations on what I do, like I don't really do criminal cases. We'll talk about that, because that's pretty interesting, pretty fascinating. But knife consultation, that's knifeconsulting.com, is another one we'll be building. So we've got all of this in the works. There's a lot going on. I want to share it with you, whether you're just a person interested in knives, if you're a knife maker who's interested in knowing what it's like to be a full-time professional knife maker for 40 years or more. If you're a knife collector or a knife enthusiast who's interested, that doesn't really know about knives and wants more information about what is a fine custom knife and why is it a better investment than real estate? Well, six times increase in value over the course of a few years, or 400% increase in 1 hour. I have some stories to tell you about that, and things like that. If you're interested in knives, if you're in any way, shape, or form, particularly fine handmade custom knives, if you want to see the largest, most detailed, most comprehensive singular knife maker's website in the world, visit jfisher.com. I have built this site over literally decades, and you will find more information there than you can possibly imagine, and I'm always adding to it, even though you might think it looks antiquated. One guy wrote me, not too long, he said, so I don't know if you're alive or not, Mr. Fisher, but I sure like your work. Well, here's the deal. I'm still alive. I plan to live a long time, and I plan to make a heck of a lot of knives, and it's going to be a fun ride. So I invite you to take this ride with me. It's 4K beauty. I'm looking really forward to it, and I'm looking forward to comments too. A lot of what I do, because it's singular, it's important for me to communicate with other human beings, answer some questions if I can, and learn things if I can. As an older person, I can tell you right now, the one thing we all learn as we get older is we don't know everything. We really don't. But we're all good learners. We all live in an age of tremendous information and application, and there's unbelievable opportunities for people out there. I hope to spread some of that enthusiasm your way, and thank you for watching and listening.